All right, good evening to those of you on the East Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to Uncanny X Chronicles, the X-Men 97 unofficial podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And thanks for joining us every single week as we give you the rundown of the past said episode of X-Men 97. Of course, this week we will be talking about the season 2, episode 8, season 2, yeah, episode 8 episode, The Dead Man's Hand. And later on, we'll have a special host joining us, which we have each week to get into some analysis of that said episode, as well as some theories that they may have, as well as myself. So be sure to stick around for that as well, because I am excited about the guests that we do have joining us this week. But before we do that, of course, I'm going to get into just a brief recap of what went down in the episode. So if you give me one moment, I will do so now. So just know, since this is a live episode, we will get into a timestamp of some of the things that we get into in terms of analysis, as well as the theories. But with that, our episode picks up from the cliffhanger of Apocalypse's seeming death at the hands of his newest horseman, Gambit. So we start off the episode at X-Corp. Of course, the newly christened name that we have and facility that we have for the X-Men, who are engaging in a game of cards before eventually being interrupted by X-Force, who come to visit along with the body of Apocalypse to not only investigate further what happened to Apocalypse, but also to determine who was the cause, which at this point they determine might be at the hands of Gambit, thanks to a clue left behind via a seared card. Using the newly christened Cerebra, formerly Cerebro, the X-Men are able to locate Gambit's whereabouts. Those whereabouts being back home, if you will, in Louisiana. So they join forces with X-Force to investigate. And meanwhile, as this is happening, Gambit is able to reunite with some of his Thieves Guild associates, and with his newfound abilities, is able to corrupt them and transform them into his acolytes. Eventually, cat and mouse game comes to pass as Gambit is able to intercept X-Force as well as the X-Men on the X-Force plane, kidnapping not only Rogue but also Nightcrawler. And as this transpires, the X-Men and X-Force faction, or I guess the collaboration that we have between those two teams, they're forced to regroup as they are again tasked with locating Gambit, and now two of their teammates who are in his custody. What follows is a battle for the soul of Gambit as the X-Men and X-Force teams battle to take him down. In one case, one team trying to do so peacefully, and the other one trying to do so with force. Eventually, though, it is in this conflict that we come to the discovery that Gambit has Apocalypse's consciousness within him. Apparently, it had been transferred in that skirmish that Apocalypse and Gambit had in that a moment in which he was transforming Gambit into one of his horsemen. However, with some effort, the X-Men are able to take Gambit down without killing him, and are able to put Apocalypse's consciousness to I guess you can say, in a recessive state within Gambit. So, he hasn't been defeated, but they are able to, in a sense, subdue him within Gambit. The victory also comes at a bittersweet cost too, because it also creates a schism between the X-Men and X-Force, of course, in terms of the manner in which they go about executing their goals. Closing out the episode, we find X-Factor coming to X-Force's doorstep to broker a truce and to likely team up together against the X-Men, which brings us to the end of the episode. So, introducing our guest today. Today's guest carries multiple hats, whether we're talking about his role as a writer, as a producer, or even as a filmmaker. If that weren't awesome enough, he's also a geek pundit like myself as the host of the Burnett work. And also, he contributes to the John Campea show as well. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Let me bring him on now.
Mr. Toy, it's great to see you again. I'm a little hot and sweaty here in my oven
I'm
of a
also sweating. It is also hot
studio.
here.
I think the last time we talked was about Dexter.
It was.
Dexter is
Yes.
good. Good to be back here talking. I love the X-Men. You know, I've really been enjoying both seasons of X-Men '97, which, by the way, it's miraculous that somebody even decided to make X-Men '97.
Right.
It's hard to believe that it exists, considering did the first X-Men cartoon run, animated series, run 5 years? Is it 5 years? 5 seasons?
Yeah, it was roughly about 5 years.
Yeah, it's wild that something had started. I think it started in '92.
92, yeah.
That we now have 2 more seasons.
I know. Wow.
And it's, I have to say, it's been pretty good.
Overall, I have my issues here and there.
Yeah, they change things around and they rapidly move through these gigantic storylines. But you know, it is a half an hour animated series. So
and it is a 9-episode season. On top of that, it's very truncated in terms of what they did before with the original run.
And it's I don't understand that really. I mean, I guess it's a money issue, but like, you know, Star Trek The Next Generation was a 26 episode season, and now modern Star Trek, we're lucky to get 10.
Yeah,
Discovery started with more, but
I was gonna say I don't know if it's a manner of like where if the industry feels like their viewing public don't have the attention span to deal with. You know, I don't know what it is. You know, I don't know if they're coming to that assumption because we have a lot of shows out there that are hour long that have 9 or 10 episodes, but it would seem like you would need to double that, like you said, if it is a half an hour show and not an hour show.
Well, I had experience I worked on an animated series for Netflix called Dota Dragon's Blood, Dota Defense of the Ancients. Yeah. And I edited, it was 3 8-episode seasons. Now, they greenlit 3 8-episode seasons, but we had to pretend as each season was airing that we didn't have a renewal yet. Which I never understood that because because the thing is animation takes so long to make.
Right.
And I would edit the animatics and we would send each episode to Korea to be animated. And then we get them back in like 6 months. And then when we get them back, we would then do the final, obviously, sound mix. So I would imagine that all the episodes of X-Men '97, they probably got a 3-season or 4-season order right off the bat. So they've been making these the whole time. And I know with Beau DeMayo departing under a cloud, even though he still obviously gets credit as an executive producer on these shows, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
To me, it's almost like a it's almost like I'm surrounded by X-Men omnibuses. I mean, if you count up, there must be $10,000 worth of omnibuses that I've bought over the years of just X-Men. So I'm a big fan, and yet X-Men '97 and the X-Men series were very truncated versions of these famous stories, but I loved them anyway. It's a different medium, so I like watching these things. And to be honest, the first part of this season, we had a big time travel story.
We did, and to their credit, I will give credit where credit is due. Within that arc that we had at the beginning of the season, I feel like that was it was a very strong way to open the season, that they were able to juggle not only 3 teams but 3 timelines. Pretty.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, how they were able to do that. So along the way, of course, I've had my minute things here and there, and I'm going to actually dive into some of the things too. And I'm curious to know if it matches up with maybe things that you have with this episode. But just initial impressions. Well, what were your thoughts on episode 8?
This was not one of my favorite episodes of the season.
Okay.
I'll say that right away. And I think, look, is it cool to see X-Force, Cable, and different X-Men teams and different uniforms from different X-Men eras
Sure.
intermingling.
Yeah.
And look, I've always liked Apocalypse as a villain, and it's interesting, the idea of it was fun when in the comics when like Angel was turned into one of the four horsemen of Apocalypse,
Absolutely.
for instance, became Archangel or what.
Archangel. Yeah.
And I loved all that. But this, I'm a little unclear. I mean, I guess they're leading up to Age of Apocalypse. I mean, is that where they're heading in the third season?
Perhaps. I mean, I've always thought based off of what they did with the decision that they made on Magneto, that maybe there is, especially considering how fast they're moving through arcs, that
Right.
they may get actually be going in a direction of what is it? Gosh, Onslaught.
Right. The Onslaught, which was never my favorite.
And the only reason why I was going to say the only reason why I say that is also because I mean, unlike the original show, this show has made such a it seems like a very purposeful effort, even though it is an X-Men show, to show that the broader, Marvel universe exists out there with other characters that have popped up.
So, right. Yeah, which happened in this episode too.
Yes.
They brought back I like the whole thing, the Thieves Guild, and bringing other compatriots of Gambit's back and people we've seen before that had been brought up in earlier episodes. And I thought that was really interesting. But, it doesn't seem to me to be a surprise to anybody what Gambit what's happened to him.
For sure. So getting into some of the themes that I felt that I love to, dive into you with is there were a couple, but the first one that I'll go into is just that idea of how love can be kind of blinding in terms of how much you're able to put up with or how much you're able to look past if it is someone that you care about deeply. And I mean, at the center of that, obviously you have in this episode Gambit and Rogue. And the reason why it came to mind for me is you have that moment where and it's I don't feel like a lot of attention is placed on it. They kind of breeze past it, but I'm like, oh wow, she was actually going to do it. Like there was a moment where Rogue was actually going to follow through, with Gambit, and had they not been interrupted by X-Force, X-Men coming in there,
right?
We may be selling a different tale here than how it ended up playing out. So what are your thoughts on that, and how that can also relate to real life too? You have people that you care about, and a lot of times to the disservice of yourself, a lot of times that can work against you and you being blinded to things.
Well, I totally, that the Gambit Rogue storyline is great. I mean, I like this on again, off again romance, but then of course, Rogue has also been with Magneto in Age of Apocalypse, and there's been it's a different kind of thing. And then in this we had Candra. Is it Candra and Apocalypse?
External,
So the external that they're paying their tithes to. It's that classic trope of being interrupted before you can consummate or whatever was going to happen between them. And it's just weird because is there time for romance with what's going on? Are you possessed by Apocalypse? Is he taking over? What's actually going on here?
Right.
And it was, I mean, I think it's probably for the best that they were interrupted.
I was going to say for sure. And the only reason why I bring that up too is because we have a lot of these elements that it seems like keep getting recycled across the season, whether it is, how, if people are truly fated to be who they are, are there things that can be interrupted or changed that can fundamentally change, who a person is, or do they have those moments that I believe was introduced in the What If series, where you just have these moments in time that, regardless of however way you may try to finesse the outcome, it's still going to be a finite point in time that cannot be changed.
That's right. Yeah.
So moving on from that and getting into another element that seems to be, coming to a head, especially with the different teams that we have. We have the X Force here that are very extremist and very ruthless in their methods, and then the X-Men who are more diplomatic, obviously, in their methods. And we have instances of that where you understand why X-Force is ruthless in their methods, and there are moments where you're like, where you are kind of conflicted, and you're like, yeah, it is extreme, but like if they didn't do this, like it could have gone another way. Like you have that moment with one of the former Horsemen that we had from the original series that they killed, and you have that moment there. It is extreme, and you see that look on Jubilee's face. But hypothetically, if they went the X-Men route and went really diplomatic with that, he could have cause more damage later on had they not, done it. But, we feel differently now, of course, because of it being, Gambit in that situation and not, one of these former Horsemen. So what are your thoughts on that of these two like approaches that we have, that we keep coming up against again and again this season?
You mean in terms of different methodologies by the teams?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I do like that, because the X-Men have always been about sort of these dual approaches. Xavier and Magneto's approach one's a revolutionary and one believes in benevolence and wants to, whereas Magneto, because of his past, will never trust humanity. And I think with characters like Cable is a product of a future. He was the Uncanny's son and came from call it a war-torn future. I mean, it's interesting that the X-Men have seen what happens, whether it's Days of Future Past where we saw, or you go into Bishop's future, or Trevor Fitzroy and that whole Scott Lobdell era of the comics, when bad things happen in the future. And Cable is from that, the techno-organic virus that infects him and all that. Or you have a kumbaya future that, I mean, usually the X-Men have always gone for the apocalyptic future, but I totally understand. I've always liked the different methodologies within groups and within the leaders, and even Apocalypse, his approach about testing people and, and testing, he appreciates strength. He's like, look, I don't care who you are, but if you're strong enough to survive, I want you around.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of sympathy there, and he's going to create his Horsemen to do his bidding, and you need X-Force, or you need the extreme X-Men, Claremont's last work. I mean, it's you need people that are going to take action, that are not so, like, if they have to kill people, they will. Even though we don't want to see that, and it's a cartoon for kids too, but I like the varying approaches, because it creates internal conflict amongst our heroes, and I like that. I like seeing the different characters jockeying for, like, who's right, who's wrong, what is the approach, and it's it's inherent drama and conflict, but it's rooted in right and wrong, and who are we and who do we want to be. And I think when you're dealing with the threat, any threat like Apocalypse or whatever, building his new group of the Horsemen, you have to be serious about what's going on. You have to be ready to rock and roll. And if we have to start taking people out, then that's what we have to do.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point of talking about that and the future that that Cable comes from, it's also fascinating too, because if we're looking at that period in which that we have at the beginning of the season, in which Cyclops and Jean come to stay with him, for a finite amount of time, I'm still curious of how we get that teenage character who's kind of wet behind the ears,
right,
and the extreme guy that we get towards the end, because when we leave him, he's still in a relatively, I feel like relatively optimistic state of mind in terms of being able to to be a symbol, for other mutants, and where they left things, now that Apocalypse, seemingly has transferred his consciousness across time and has left that period. Figure, or in a sense, freeing that timeline of that period of Apocalypse. So I still find it fascinating of still thinking of those things of how do we get to this kid here, this teenager here, and get to this extreme adult here. Like what else drastically do we have happening there that we get that
it's going to be
from one into the other. So it'll be interesting.
It's going to be interesting to see, because that story of the various iterations of Cable or Nathaniel Summers, yes, or whatever is
so
it's very convoluted. I mean, I think the problem is these shows are so brief. I'm surprised at how much these episodes actually pack into one episode.
How dense. Yeah,
they're really dense. And for me, even though they're not following things exactly, which I don't mind. I mean, people are always complaining that the MCU doesn't follow the comic storylines. I'm like, well, it never could, because the MCU is it's different mediums, but it has to make you believe in the real world, and so much happens in superhero comics that if you were to translate it directly, there'd be no grounding. You wouldn't be able to get into it. Like, you look at, it's really interesting to see right now. We've seen the X-Men being depicted in the trailers for Doomsday.
Yeah.
And finally we're getting Scott Summers in a comic accurate Cyclops suit, or I should say the Jim Lee X-Men 1 Cyclops, which is everyone's favorite Cyclops suit. I mean, I did kind of like the one in Joss Whedon's X-Men run. It was kind of interesting, but there's something about those yellow stripes on his blue, and to see that we're getting that and to see him unleash the optic blasts. But then on the other hand, now we're looking at this animated series that moves at a breakneck pace, and how much time. I mean, it's interesting how much they're actually borrowing. I mean, they're taking things from various comic runs and kind of rejiggering it and putting it into a different. And I found that hugely entertaining as an X-Men fan, because I don't find myself going, well, it didn't happen this way in the no, this is its own thing. And I like what it's doing. I mean, the fact that it brought up, extent, the thieves and her, or that brief flashback. I mean, somebody brought up an idea that there might have been somebody that was better for Apocalypse to have had a previous relationship with, like Genesis. Would have been a better character, but I just don't care. I just watch this and I want to be entertained, and it just makes me, I still love the X-Men. I watch this show, and it for all the shenanigans happening, I just love it.
And then I was going to say also, because I always enjoy this argument too, with other people who are very precious about adaptations, is, wouldn't it be boring if you know everything there is to know about one iteration of the material, and then to have it one for one in another form? Don't you want to have just a tiny bit of a surprise to kind of keep things interesting? Like, I don't know. Maybe there's some people who just want to have one for one and just have peanut butter and jelly every single day, and not have some variety in there. So I don't know.
No, but I think your point is well taken. I mean, I like the fact that they have these different kinds. I mean, it's a weird thing because, you always hear, well, I've heard authors say when they don't like their adaptations of whatever's been made, TV shows or movies from their books, the authors always turn around and say, well, you've got the original book you can always go back to.
Right.
And it's not going anywhere.
It's always there.
And the X-Men continuity over the course of the last 50 years,
it's so convoluted. It's so all over the place.
all over the place. And it's just gotten to the point where I'll dip into various storylines. Like, I'll pull an omnibus out and start reading it. and just enjoy, like I just read The Extinction Agenda recently because that omnibus came out last year. And, I'm just enjoying it for its own sake. And sometimes I'm like, I don't necessarily know, I don't remember, because I read all this stuff when it came out over the last 40 years. And I'm like, there's hundreds of issues and things to remember. But I like the fact that they've been pretty diligent about creating their own continuity within the show. I'm surprised at how much continuity there is in these episodes, and they're even harking back to the first 5 seasons of X-Men.
They are, and they managed to do that. There were some cases where, like, I was, that they have been able to successfully do that. There have been some criticisms, though, at least on my end, where I felt like there wasn't, any follow through, where maybe they had forgotten certain relationships, and I'm like, they were together at one point. How did they just automatically now where they're just teammates? Like, what's going on here? Speaking on X-Force, well, not X-Force, X Factor. But with that in mind, getting into some theories, because I also wanted to give the floor for some time to talk, because we were talking about this offline of our live action universe as well that we have on the way. But getting into theories. One thing that I wanted to get into with you is just the idea of, let's see, what we picture might be the end game. I know we kind of tease some things that you anticipate may be where they're headed and where I believe they may be headed, but now that we know that we kind of have this, I guess, Jekyll and Hyde thing that I guess they seem to kind of be alluding to with this Gambit and Apocalypse type of horseman-ism that we have. What they might be after, like, is he going to? Do you feel like he's going to revert back to his horseman persona, or do you feel like they will find a way to somehow separate our Gambit from the horsemen, and that's how they'll be able to distinguish it as quote unquote the apocalypse persona?
Well, that's a good question. I think they kind of have to go full on horsemen of apocalypse. I want to see them fight
in his glory. Yeah,
I want to see Apocalypse become a formidable force, and I just like that idea, and I like how it torments our characters. I like seeing our characters tormented, and then they have to deal with the trauma of what happened to them while they were a horseman. But like you said earlier, going into the Onslaught storyline, I think with the disposition of where Magneto is, it makes sense.
Professor Xavier.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, okay, I just never, I always thought that was a little too far in the comics. Even the character Onslaught, and the fact that, for those of you who don't know, Onslaught is a melding of Magneto and Xavier's minds into a, uber powerful being. And, I sometimes things get a little too comic booky for me, but based on what happened to Magneto, I could absolutely see them going in that direction, and they're going to put their own spin on it.
And I will say this, we are due for a legit Onslaught arc, because they kind of tried to go that way. I don't know if you remember this in the original.
Yes, I do.
And they did kind of like a weird little, psychic version with Professor X, where he had like a cape and all this other stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I would prefer the Onslaught that we, are familiar with from the comics versus kind of and I know it makes me sound hypocritical because you're just talking about 1-for-1, right? But I would like for them to do a closer adaptation to what we have of Onslaught, because as I said, unlike what we had in the original series, we have many of the factions and all the chess pieces, if you will, of characters that we would need to do the story. We know that the Avengers exists out there because we had an episode, an interaction between Rogue and Captain America in season 1.
Yep.
We know that the Fantastic Four are out there because if you look really closely, Mr. Fantastic was playing with the kids at the X Mansion in one of the episodes, and they did it really fast. If you really weren't paying attention, you would have missed it. But I looked at it a couple of times. I was like, wait a second, that's Mr. Fantastic playing with the kids at the X Mansion.
And we know from Comic-Con in season 3, they're bringing back the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Correct.
They showed that clip with Pyro, Avalanche, Blob, and Toad.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be cool.
And it's not a stretch to have Franklin Richards in there now that we know that we have the Fantastic Four running around in the world of this show.
Yeah.
So and if memory serves, I'm getting my my memory correct, Apocalypse factors into that as well towards the tail end of that arc. So I mean, you still have the players that they decide, which actually I'm getting ahead of myself. Brings me to my next question. Do you think that they're going to get rid of Apocalypse, like for good, or are they going to, go the typical route of having him see another day?
Well, they've leaned heavily into him this season.
They have, which makes me think the former.
Yeah, so I don't see them getting rid of him.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, I think everybody. I really enjoyed. I don't know if they're going to do Age of Apocalypse, but I enjoyed seeing those versions of the characters. It was at the time it happened. It was sort of a breath of fresh air. And of course, it's like the mirror universe in Star Trek, the original Star Trek, and you got to see this. What they do is they take the status quo and they can literally go back to square one and do anything with it because it's an alternate universe that's dominated by Apocalypse. And It was so much fun. And the fact that it went on, like all of the X books were affected for a long time. They renamed the books for a while, and I really enjoyed that. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But I do think that Apocalypse, they're not going to get rid of him anytime soon. They're teeing him up to become, a really big bad that's really involved in all of their lives for a while.
Indeed.
I would imagine.
Indeed. And let me ask this too, now that they've been pushing, this trio of teams, we have X Factor, we have X Force, we have X-Men. And do we feel like either of those, all of those teams will make it out unscathed? Whether we're saying literally or figuratively. Figuratively, I'm saying, might they break up and disband, or will they literally get removed off the board?
I think they're going to get messed up, but I don't think that they're going to be annihilated. Okay. I think, by the way, and I do like the multiple teams. I do like their different methodologies, and they go and do different things.
Yeah.
And I do like that. So I wouldn't mind if they kept doing that.
Okay. All right, cool.
I mean, I don't know how they're going to play it, but they each have their strengths.
They do. I guess the only
You don't sound convinced. What would you like to see happen?
Well, I mean, I would say, just as you said, there's so much lore when it comes to the X-Men and so many different rosters that we have with a lot of these teams. I like it when we're able to kind of mix things up.
Right.
With, some of these rosters. So, I mean, if we have it in a figurative sense that some of them get disbanded, they still exist. And then, some people of this team may have to, rotate over to, this said team. I'm cool with that. Even if we have, some of the X-Men, they disband from the X-Men and join some of our other teams that don't begin with X. I'm good with that because they exist out there, and we have precedents for that of them joining those said teams. That would be the big thing that I would be game for, to have the drama of them figuratively being destroyed and disbanding, even if it is temporarily with another team. But we'll see. We'll see, what comes of that, or what they decide to do with that. Getting into, well, I tell you what, we'll go into, what we thought of the episode, and then we could talk, our live actions. I want to be able to separate those things. But since you are the guest this week, I wanted to, give you the floor. I don't know if you had a chance to see prior episodes, but similar to what we had with with Aliens when I had you on here, and Dexter too. We have 5 X's if it is considered it a perfect episode, 4 if it's good, and 3 if it is average, and then it just
I gotta give
trickles
this
down.
yeah, I gotta give this episode a 3.
Yeah.
I didn't, it kind of, there's a lot going on, but it didn't grab me the way other episodes this season did.
Hmm.
It felt like there was a lot of different things happening, but it wasn't focused enough to really ramp up the drama or the suspense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
I thought it was an interesting episode, but it wasn't dramatically satisfying.
And I think I know why, which kind of I'm actually surprised. I thought you were going to say good versus average, but I agree that I give it 3 out of 5 X's. And the reason why I feel like you may feel that way is because I don't feel like the way that they've done it was earned. Like
No,
I feel like that needed to be drawn across more episodes than they did. Where you had this build up even from the end of season 1 that Gambit was going to end up being a horseman for Apocalypse, which
yeah.
many of us were salivating like, oh, I can't wait till this happens. Even though they have those initial episodes of setting up Apocalypse, which were great, by the way, the first 3 episodes, I feel like there was a missed opportunity after you had already established what we're dealing with as our big bad of being Apocalypse, with all these teams and how they factor in and where they how they fit into the story. Once you've established that, episode 4 should have been a continuation of what we had with the ramifications of what transpired from that loss of Magneto. We didn't get that. I know I didn't have you for that episode, but they decided to do a kind of sideline episode with the Brood, which, don't get me wrong, I love the Brood, but I didn't think that was the right fit of kind of putting that episode in there. And then you also have I felt like there was an opportunity there to do an episode introducing Apocalypse, making Gambit, and that could have been an episode that, even if you had little like button scenes here and there, just like you do with the live action universe, right? Like, you still needed to have something there, a through line where they were still doing things in the background. I mean, this show has done a pretty decent job of being able to juggle more than one storyline, of having a main storyline and then having some of these subplots that are happening in the background. You could have had it as a subplot that was happening in the background. Yeah, they were dealing with this threat right here, right? But there's something else that's going on right here, that this mystery that's happening behind the scenes that they keep hearing about, within a lot of these episodes, that they could have had and built to get to this episode, versus us just having the one episode and seemingly already resolving it by the episode's end. So I think that, which is season 1, I will give them credit that they were able to, as you said, Robert, dive into a lot of arcs and seamlessly dive into them. I felt like the what they did with the Goblin Queen with Madeline Pryor.
I loved it.
I loved it. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they were able to truncate that the way that they were, because I would have felt that you would need to stretch that out further. And it didn't feel like it needed to be stretched further. It seemed like it was fine. But I want to say with this season, because they're being so ambitious with some of the things that they're trying to accomplish, it seems that some things are being shortchanged or put in a weird place, pacing wise, in terms of the overarching story that they have this season. And I mean, there are episodes, like I said, the Brood story I love, and I don't want to keep harping on that. I love the Brood. I think they're awesome. I'm a horror guy. They're the Marvel's version of Xenomorphs. I love it, but I feel like that could have been served later on in the season, versus focusing your story on what we had in those 3 episodes of establishing Apocalypse and reestablishing him for the incredible threat that he is, and then showing the ramifications of that, of having an episode with Professor X dealing with his trauma. We had the episode with him in the
Yep.
danger room. That
Yep.
would have been a great episode to be episode 4, because it's still a follow through or through line of him dealing with the trauma and how that carried over into what we had with the danger room. And then you could have also perhaps episode 5, like the midway point, started to get into this brewing threat of Gambit. All the other stuff, like Wolverine, like all of that stuff, that side quests, like that. I mean, that was probably, I feel like, the weakest episode, because
Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah.
yeah, because like talking about what we had with, what is it, the Team X, like a lot of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like if memory serves from that original show, and I've talked about this before, they didn't leave on good terms. This was basically, it was a remix of an episode that they had in the original show.
Yeah.
And it was literally, even the title was exactly the same as that same episode.
Yeah.
when they joined back up. And when they disbanded after that, they weren't like, hey, cool, I'll see you next time. Like they still were not cool with each other when they disbanded after that. They were kind of forcibly brought together, and it was like a temporary truce. But like in this episode, it was like, okay, they forgot all about that. They're good now.
Right.
So,
yeah, 100%. It was weird. But I do like seeing characters like Richter. It was, always come back like, well, that's so weird, But another thing I want to say about this episode is, they kind of, you don't really know, like, what does Apocalypse want? Like, it's a little, I don't quite know. And because we don't know, it makes it harder to anticipate, because part of the fun is to anticipate what a villain wants to do and watch his plans or her plans unfold.
Sure, yeah.
And it's a little like I'm not quite sure what's going on overall. And then also I thought that romantic backstory for Apocalypse was kind of handled in a ham-fisted way.
Yeah.
You had this brief flashback, and it's okay, like I get it. So we're gonna have a ties to the Thieves Guild or whatever's going. I get it, but that seemed a little not done well.
And then I was gonna say, and then I'll get in getting into expanding on what you're talking about with Gambit. And this is a problem that I had in other episodes too, because I had this issue last episode about the power scaling. The power scaling, I'm starting to have an issue with. If you're going to have certain characters in an episode, here's the thing, like they've done justice to characters that I feel kind of get shortchanged a lot, even in the original show. But in characters that we haven't had in the original show, that they decided to also place in this continued sequel series, if you will, continuation. We've had characters like Exodus, where I'm like, how did he get defeated by the X-Men, where he could have taken out the entire team?
Yeah.
Like, why is he doing a teleporting sword fight with Nightcrawler when he could end the fight in a couple of seconds and defeat the entire team because he's that powerful, and he gets like shot in the back? Like, I'm like, come on, bro. But talking about this episode, similarly, Gambit is a horseman. Like, why we have one moment, it seems to be some inconsistency there. Why we have one moment where he's able to push Professor X out of his head,
right,
initially, and then in another moment, Professor X is able to easily get into his head and fight him, on the astral plane. So that's the only thing I ask. Like, when you have characters, and I know it can be tricky dealing with the power scaling and trying to, navigate that, just be consistent of what characters can and cannot do. Because, like, there have been some instances between that, with the episode that I just named from last week to the episode that we just had, where I'm like, okay, they're able to deal with that in terms of what we already know about the character, of how the character operates and how their powers operate, or what you yourself have established as a rule that you yourself are not following.
Right. And I feel that playing fast and loose like that can be very upsetting. I mean, when you're following these things, because we know, we're like, come on. And I think that the writers sometimes forget that these characters are not all evenly matched.
No,
Like sometimes I
at
feel like
all.
they feel like we can just all put them in a room together and some powers will always cancel each other's out, and you're like, no, that's not how it works. And I feel that inconsistency is a problem,
Yeah.
and I think that's true of a lot of writers who aren't just writing on X-Men, but that are writing on a lot of these shows. Like, there's no way if I was hired to write on an X-Men show, I could try and read as many X-Men comics as possible, but I would never be entirely up to speed. The problem is most people now are just going and reading Wikipedia, or they're reading Wikipedia, or whatever the Marvel wiki is, and they get an overview of these characters, but the people sometimes that are writing these characters don't totally understand them. And they don't have that experience, and they don't quite understand how powerful, like if someone's an Omega level mutant, what does that mean? I mean, I love when Scarlet Witch, decimates the X-Men and uses all that chaos magic, and Doctor Strange has to come back, and she's created her kids, and Doctor Strange has to like stop this from happening, but she flat up kills some X-Men, and by the way, I love that storyline. I mean, I always go back to that and read the comics, but I feel that happens a lot in this stuff. And then again, I can't nitpick it the way I nitpick, say, Star Trek, because it is only an animated series and it is moving at such a breakneck pace
It
that I'm
is.
more forgiving in a show like this.
Yeah. I was gonna
But
say,
like you said, in one episode, he can either repel Professor Xavier and then he can't.
right.
So it's like that kind of
You
inconsistency.
already established it yourself in the episode. That's
Yeah,
one thing.
like that's not good writing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because I'll give another example of that too. I mean, you have, even though we know Jean Grey is not, possessed by the Phoenix Force at this point, she is still a capable telekinetic. And so it's hard for me to believe that she cannot land the plane herself without Psylocke and Cable, when in the last season, when they were in the city, she was lifting entire buildings with her mind by herself without a lot of effort. Because there's always been the joke, at least in the original show, where I don't know if you've seen this, where she's like sighing about every single thing and she always faints whenever she's like pushes herself too hard, which always kind of like irritated me to no end, in terms of that portrayal that they did in the original show, where I knew that she's far more capable than what she is, and they made her more, I feel like, a damsel until she became Phoenix, versus showing how capable she is. But yeah, like that was inconsistent too. I'm like, she doesn't need Cable or Psylocke to lift this, to lift the X Force's plane. Like, she's able to do that herself. It's not. It doesn't require an Omega level mutant or an Omega abilities. Like an Alpha mutant could do that. Like she should be able to do that, because she's beyond. She's at that level, even at her base, can do that. So yeah,
100%.
there's just things like that. But yes, I absolutely agree with you. And to your suggestion, because I know, like I said, we were talking about offline. We do have some other things happening in the in the wings elsewhere in the live action universe that we have with X-Men. So I'd love to know your thoughts, because we were both at Comic-Con. I don't know if you were in Hall H. I was, but
I was not.
Okay. In speaking to the worst kept secret that we know now about, Brand New Day, and the news that we've gotten recently with Emma Frost, as well as with Cyclops. What are your thoughts on those that have been confirmed? And, once we talk about that, we can dive into some rumored ones that have been making rounds.
I'm really liking I like the character. I like the actor they cast as Scott Summers. I like Sadie Sink. I like the fact that Emma Frost is a little older.
Yeah.
Samara Weaving's in her 30s, and this new team seems to be squarely in their 20s, where they should be, I think. So I'm excited about that direction. I also think it's really interesting that Jean Grey, what she did in Spider-Man Brand New Day, sets mutants up as a threat.
Yeah.
And I think that it was really interesting that they're trying to map her as if all you need to know is the energy. It's you still have to have the X gene to make it work. You can't just, as they're scanning her mind, it works because she has the X gene, I would imagine. They're trying to get regular human beings to be able to do that, and I don't
Right.
think that they can. But the idea, now they have a real reason. I mean, she held at bay New Yorkers.
Yeah, city.
She demonstrated a demonstrably huge power base in what she could do, and that immediately starts up, because I've been very curious about how are they going to weave in the X-Men into the MCU. I mean, Miss Marvel, they called her a mutant in her show. You know, they showed Beast, they showed Kelsey Grammer at the end of Marvels.
We have
So
Namor.
is a mutant.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see, because obviously, for people that don't know, I mean, we're about to see the universe destroyed, you know, in Doomsday, and then Doom is going to put it back. We've got Battle World, we got Secret Wars, and then when we come out of Secret Wars, you have essentially a new
rebooted world.
Rebooted world. And Kevin Feige saying, well, we're not rebooting everybody. So Shang-Chi will come back as Shang-Chi. I'm sure Thor will come back as Thor. Steve Rogers is going to continue on. Maybe they'll have an Illuminati or whatever. But my curiousness is, I mean, Apocalypse goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. So are we going to see Apocalypse? Is Mr. Sinister going to be the villain of the X-Men? I don't know. But how are they going to deal with Xavier and Magneto? I mean, Magneto can't be a Holocaust survivor anymore.
Right.
So
you have to update it somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they integrate all these characters. And I don't mind that the mutants have been off the world stage, that they've been in hiding, you know, and allowing Professor Xavier, the mutant threat, they've teed it up in Spider-Man. And they can bring it out like there's this mutant threat, and that's when Professor Xavier steps on the world stage and says, I'm Charles Xavier, I'm a mutant, because we did see kind of that way in First Class. You know, we saw young Xavier and young Mystique meet, and how they grew up and had this sort of brotherly sister relationship together. And there really weren't mutants. The U.S. government didn't know about mutants, and we saw what it was like to inject or show mutants coming into society. And I can see them do something like that, and that was a lot of fun. I really liked X-Men First Class, and I like seeing all these things. So I think they're gonna be able to do that with this. I think they're gonna cast these X-Men properly. It's going to be interesting to see the roster on the team. I mean, are they going to? Is, you know, Sebastian Shaw, the Black King and the White Queen? Are they going to do the Hellfire Club? Because I always love the Hellfire Club. I want to join the Hellfire Club. You know, and so it'll be interesting to see where they go with all this. But I'm excited.
Sure, for sure. I mean, I guess. Well, touching on some of the things that you talked about, I don't know if you've heard some of these things that, you know, seem to have some follow through for what they could do from what was established in Brand New Day. They had mentioned, and I'm brain farting on our secondary villain that we had in Brand New Day from the organization.
Damage Control.
Yeah, Damage Control. That our villain, the head of Damage Control, may potentially, I don't know if you've heard this theory, I can't take credit for it, is that it might be Sinister, and that they may be utilizing that as a way as a backdoor in the X-Men, because he seems to be so obsessed with genetics and so obsessed with Jean Grey that it gives you the license to be able to say, hey, that's Mr. Sinister, because he has the ability to be someone else.
Yep.
And that could be a good reveal to connect things from Brand New Day to your new X-Men movie. So, I mean, you have that idea, which, you know, plays into what you're talking about of the mutants always being around, which is fine. And then you also have the other idea too, because I mean, we have a series like Loki, right, where we have, and I understand, you know, maybe because of the baggage of the character that it's attached to, that they may kind of like steer clear of it, but they've established it as a rule that we've had all these iterations of these universes. So maybe, you know, this universe as it currently stands with the Marvel Cinematic Universe had the mutants plucked out of it. And there was one universe where there were mutants, but because they, as you said, they are a threat in terms of what they're capable of and the wild cards that they are and the abilities that they're able to manifest, that they were plucked out of the universe that we've come to know as the MCU, and they'll be able to return back to that universe once we get out of Secret Wars, because they were originally plucked from that universe as if they had never been a part of it.
Well, yeah, what's interesting, I mean, I don't know if I should say that, I'll say this anyway, but like in Doomsday, you have 3 primary Earths that you're
Right.
dealing with.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with that. We know this. They've said this. You've got the
Yeah, they have.
Fantastic Four Earth, you've got the X-Men Earth,
X-Men, yeah.
and then you've got 616. So the X-Men Earth has the X-Men timeline as so, I mean, the X-Men timeline in the Fox movies is all over the place. How many times did
Yes, it
Xavier
is.
die?
Yeah.
So you just
Another convoluted universe, yeah.
yeah, you've got to assume that we were looking at different Earths or different realities or things were changing. I don't care. I love Logan. I love Days of Future Past. And those movies are great. I love X-Men First Class. I love X-Men and X2. So it's going to be interesting to see, because that is the X-Men universe where it has a semblance of all the characters that we know. You know, everybody, I would assume they've all been there, and they've all gone through hell when we meet them. They've been fighting incursions. They've been fighting other Earths for a long time. So the X-Men are very decimated when they show up in Doomsday. They've been fighting for a long time, fighting incursions.
Right.
Whereas the 616 is like, we don't know what's going on. What's happening? They don't know, and neither does the Fantastic Four Earth. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I'm most curious about the fact that they're putting together this team, the classic X-Men team, and they're rooting them in a specific time, or I guess, but we don't know how they're going to play it after Battle World. But they're all going to be together, I would imagine, at a specific time and place, which is post-Secret Wars on our Earth. Now, we know there have been mutants. Like, I don't know how you reconcile Battle World with our Earth. I don't know how that's going to work. My problem with all that is it pushes the Marvel Cinematic Universe did such a good job of making us believe in it. Like when it first started, I'm like, how are they going to make us believe that Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America?
I remember, yeah.
Like I've said that, and they did a great job.
Yeah,
and then they built on it. They built on the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they did a fine job. I think where they went wrong is when they introduced the TVA in Loki, because the very conceit of the TVA is a parody. It's supposed to be a parody of office politics, and it looks like it just went too far. I don't believe in the TVA, but we have it, so we have to believe in it. But it affected everything. I mean, Quantum Mania, the quantum realm was not well portrayed. It just pushed too far, and it, in my estimation, broke the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they're leaning into all this and making Battle World. That's also a huge ask for the audience. So what we're doing with this is that we have to figure out, well, how is this going to, what Earth, when we come back to Earth at the end of Secret Wars, are they going to remember that happened? And what happens to all the people on Earth? Well, we got snapped away in Thanos, and now we're come back. Do we remember that or not?
I was going to say, I have a theory on that, and I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned the Illuminati, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the Illuminati are only those that remember. Everyone else is not aware of what transpired, but the way that they're able to kind of fit that in there is that
that's interesting.
They make the Illuminati only those people that remember how it was before and how it is now. And so, like, they are there to police things to ensure that we don't have another instance of that happening again. So they are their own secret faction of, characters that are those that remember.
Right. Yeah.
That could be a way that they can do it. And they can still kind of have their cake and eat it too, of having, characters that maybe weren't a part of the Illuminati in the original formation of the team, in the original iteration, but they're still able to have their cake and eat it too, of having this quote unquote secret faction that is kind of policing things and making, you know, ruthless choices about certain things because they are very weary and about everything that they have gone through thus far with all of these different battles, whether it's with Thanos or whether it's with, you know, with Doctor Doom now and all of that stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm just really excited.
I am too.
You know,
I'm
I can tell you should be excited for Vision Quest, and they'll be dropping a trailer at D23, and then they have another trailer that's going to come out probably in September.
And hopefully we'll get some more confirmations because, as you said, you know, with the casting, there have been some other names that have been thrown out there. You know, we have Adam Driver out there that's been thrown around as a name. You know, at one point, you know, people were saying that he was going to be Magneto, and another point they're saying that he was going to be Sinister. Now I'm hearing that he's going to be, you know, Hellfire Club as Sebastian. So personally, I think he'd be a great Sebastian. I wouldn't mind him as Magneto. I don't know if I would want him as Sinister though. I like him as either Magneto or Sebastian.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to play that. I mean, I'm just curious to see. I love the fact that we're going to, if this is truly the mutant saga, where they can go. There's so many different, like, I'd love to see like the Ascani Sun miniseries which I really loved, to see the whole history of Cable, you know, and to see delve into that. And then I like those other characters. I like the Bishop's universe, like with Trevor Fitzroy, and when he first showed up, I like those characters. Long Shot, the Mojo verse, Spiral, you know, all that. They can go any direction they want, really. It's going to be really, I mean, hell, the X-Men even fought Dracula.
Yeah.
You know, and
there's your Blade back door, folks. There's your Blade back door.
Yeah,
Since you can't figure out what to do with it, there's your back door right there. You can make it as a sideline to the X-Men movie. There you go. Problem solved.
100%. And we shall see. It'll be really interesting to see where they go. But I'm very excited to see where they take the X-Men. But it wouldn't surprise me if they announce, because if you think these movies usually, they really take about 2 years to make.
Sure.
So if they announce the cast of X-Men, I mean, we know they've announced Black Panther 3. We know they've announced Ghost Rider, and they've got X-Men coming.
And we have another potential reunion between some, if rumurs are right, about some alien Romulus cast members. I don't know if you're privy to this, of Cailee Spaeny potentially being Rogue.
So I think that would be an amazing.
And I'll be all for it.
Or Shadowcat.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd be all for it.
I'd be all for it too. I mean, I think it's a great. I think David. I don't know if it's Johansson. Is it Johansson? You know, who's going to play T'Challa's son? I love him as an actor. He was incredible in The Long Walk, and he was incredible in Romulus. And I just got from a friend of mine in England a movie called Waste Man. This movie, which he stars in, and I've never seen this film, but here it is. And I just got sent. And it's an 18 certificate, so sex and violence. I can't wait to see it. But he's an amazing actor. I think he's a great choice, and I'm glad they're bringing a Black Panther back. I mean, T'Challa's son. I like that. So, but it's going to be interesting to see, because they're going to have to start making these movies soon.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Secret Wars has got to come out next Christmas. I would imagine they want to delay it. They're probably deep into shooting right now. I would imagine they have to be, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see Doomsday.
Neither can I. And then I'll leave it with two other things. One being another casting thing, and then the second being the approach that we have with the MCU. Another rumor one out there, which I'm also excited about, that seems to be a thing that may come to pass, and I think it'd be perfect casting, is and I apologize for butchering her name, but Inde Navarrete as Mystique. Man, like Obsession, like I can't think of, you know, someone else who would be, you know, perfect at being kind of the duplicitous, you know, character that is Mystique. Other than
and she's a big nerd, apparently. You know, building her own gaming computer and stuff. And so I think she probably would love to be into the X-Men, and I would love to see that as well, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but getting into like the approach aspect, one thing that I'll close off with that I'd love to get your thoughts on is prior to this time, one thing that we've seen with Feige and Marvel Studios in terms of how they have done things is announcing these huge slates, right? And at one time it worked fine where a lot of them came to pass, but you know flash forward from that 2019 show where we had an entire slate, given projects and films that we now know are not going to come to pass, and have, either come about in different iterations or they've been, supplanted into another, film, and, they've been acted as, been, I guess, merged into existing properties. What are your thoughts now of them being very close to the vest about doing individual announcements versus announcing a whole slate? I'm
I
all
think
for it, actually.
I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea. I think, it's like the old TV commercial with Orson Welles. We will sell no wine before it's time. I mean, with the fan community has become, and I'm a lifelong fan, but I think
Me too.
I grew up with the mental disposition that it was so cool to get any of this stuff. And now we've been getting an embarrassment of riches for so long that we've become so jaded that
Yes.
fans tend to lose
Thank
their
you.
excitement over all
Yeah.
this. And I maintain, look, I'm a big James Bond fan, and I would say half the James Bond movies are good to great, and the other half aren't. But that doesn't dash my excitement. Whenever there's a new James Bond movie, I get deliriously excited. I've been watching them since I was a little kid, and I want them to be good. I want everything to be good. So my baseline is to hope it's awesome. And it's not like they're trying to make things that suck. I mean,
Right.
Doomsday is a huge swing. It's going to be crazy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where it all goes. I don't understand, like, it is really disappointing when storytelling is compromised by the people telling the stories who think they have to inject them with more messaging, or they have to follow some protocol that they're getting from society at large. I'm like, dude, be true to the story that you're telling. And the problem is, there a lot of the times they haven't been. And when they're not true to their own stories, the first people that can see that is we, the fans.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so I see what you did there. And then we as fans resent it. And I think rightfully so. I mean, I've been railing about modern Star Trek for so long. I'm like, the people that are writing Star Trek are not great science fiction writers, and they're trying to turn the first 3 episodes of Strange New Worlds. It's like, let's look at Jurassic Park. Let's look at why am I drawing a blank? Well, then there was The Hangover, and then there was, the ship that goes to Uranus. Why am I drawing a blank? I was just talking about it. I see the name of the movie.
All
Sam
good.
Neill's. What's that?
No, I was saying all good. No, you
Yeah,
good.
but it's just why am I trying to blank on the name? I'm seeing it.
And you'll remember it randomly after
Yeah,
you get off
no,
the
I
game
know
or
what it is, but yeah, and it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you not just making up brand new Star Trek stories? Can you not do that?
Yeah.
And it really bothers me. And I think what happens is, the great thing about the MCU in its first, say, 10 years is that you had the Marvel story group. You had people that had been writing these characters for a long time. You had the Marvel design team that was designing these things as they were going into it, doing great artwork, going, let's look at this, let's look at that. And they were conceiving all of this stuff. And then they kind of lost all of that. And it's a bummer. And I'm hoping they get back to that. I thought Spider-Man Brand New Day was a terrific movie. It worked on a number of different levels. And a lot of people said, oh, it's like 2 movies in one, because you got the Jean Grey business and the stuff before that. But I'm like, no, because Jean Grey and Spider-Man were kind of going through the same things. Losing Aunt May. I mean, that scene with Aunt May and the 3 of them together, that was a terrific scene.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not just creating scenes of let's deal with our trauma because it's cool to do so, because everyone on TikTok's dealing with their trauma. So it worked story-wise, and I thought it worked really beautifully. And it was, as far as a movie goes, it was really emotionally moving. And I thought most of Spider-Man Brand New Day was, dare I say, a marvel of a movie.
It was minus some. I was gonna say my only gripe is one particular character introduction that I feel like was just shoehorned, and it wasn't really any like through line of they just popped up and all of a sudden now they know each other and they already have an established relationship, and it would have been nice to have something there to I know that there's a lot going on in the film, but I still feel like for anyone who is a casual moviegoer, even as
Yeah.
someone who has seen everything, even for a casual moviegoer, that is going to be very confusing for them. Where it's going to be
Yeah.
like, okay, they know each other. Who's that person? Like, well, how do they factor in? Um,
By the way,
and
it was Event Horizon was the movie that I was thinking about.
yes, I love yes,
The
yes.
Griffin
Paul
incident was
Thomas
totally
Anderson. Yes,
a riff on Event Horizon.
yes, for sure. But yeah, like I guess the reason why I would also say that I'm glad that they're doing it that way is even if they personally know that what their plan is, as Kevin Feige has said, we know our plan, 15 years down the line or however many years, that's cool, but I don't want to know how the hot dog is made. I don't want to know how the hamburger is made of all the things that are happening behind the scenes, because I want to be surprised of where you might be taking a story. Because maybe I don't want to know if a character gets out of the story, because now I know what's coming next, where they have to be in that story. So now you already spoiled that they're gonna live through or survive through this story that comes before that, because we know that they're in this new story. Because it's happened a couple of times where it's like spoiled things. We're like, oh, I guess that character survives then, even though there's all this drama or this hype around the stakes of this current story. We know that they have this other story that's coming later, so they're clearly going to survive. Even if it's a secondary character, oh, they're going to survive this because they're in the other story. They were announced in this story, so um, it takes away. And mind you, again, these are comic book adaptations. Characters die, they come back. It's a given, but it's nice to, like you were saying, have be focused on that one story and to understand the stakes of that one story. And then, afterwards, if we're surprised that things may continue or go down this particular road, you guys, weave it in that direction as a surprise.
Yeah.
Versus us knowing, 3-5 films down the line what their entire arc is going to be.
Right. Yep.
But yeah, that is going to do it for us here at Uncanny X. As always, Rob, thank you so much for hopping on. Always a pleasure.
This is great. What a great chat.
Yeah, always a treat to have you on. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, that I do where I cover media and do deep dives and things like that. You can also find me on Instagram under Robert Meyer Burnett. And you can also find my latest work is the star-studded audio drama True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, which is set in 1932 and 1933 Chicago. I've got actors in it like Katie Sackhoff. I've got Anthony LaPaglia. The recent Vincent Pastore from The Sopranos, who recently passed away, is in it. Michael Rosenbaum stars. David Strathairn, Barry Bostwick, C. Thomas Howell. It's really cool. If you want a truly cinematic audio experience, check out True Noir. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. It's all over the place. And tell me what you think when you're done.
All right, excellent. And you can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X, and then Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. In a little bit, we'll be doing a live watch of the season finale of a House of the Dragon. Looking forward to seeing who's left standing at the end of
wait.
Season finale in about an hour and some change. But otherwise, yeah, just stay tuned. We do have a couple of other shows coming up, a couple of other cons. But that will do it for us here, and I will see you guys soon. Bye now.